Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. Today I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite live albums. There's a bunch of links down below. Make sure you go check all those out. There's links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for our merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music weekly playlist that we put together, and also the Patreon page. Make sure you go check all that out. Of course, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button down below, and make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. To be completely honest, I've never been that big of a fan of live albums, but there are a few that really kind of stuck with me and I've really loved over the years, and I play pretty regularly. I don't have, like I said, I don't have the biggest live album collection. Maybe 20, maybe 30 albums. Probably not even that much. Probably 20. I got right around, I'm sure right around 20 live albums. But I got 5 today that, like I said, I've loved, for 30 plus years. I play pretty regularly. The first one is one that, I remember when I was a kid. I was probably maybe 6, 7 years old, 8 years old. And my dad used to play this album nonstop all the time. He was a big Bob Seger fan. And of course, that is Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet, Live Bullet. This was recorded back in, I have to look at my notes here, September 4th and 5th, 1975 at Cobo Hall. And the interesting thing about Bob Seger around this time period is that he was a very regional musician. I remember reading an article about him playing I think it was in early part of 76. He played to a packed 78,000 seat stadium in Pontiac, Michigan, the Pontiac Silverdome. Sold out show, and then the next night he played a show in Chicago, and it was less than 1,000 people that was there. It was very, so in 75, Bob Seger, like I said, very regional musician. It wasn't until I think it was the next album that he came out with that he kind of at least gained more popularity across the U.S. But I've always loved this album just because it's a very, you can hear the passion in Bob Seger and that band, and it's a great live show. If you're not familiar with this album, definitely go check it out. I think Turn the Page is probably one of the greatest live tracks ever played on any album. I love it, and it's like I said, this is one I go back to pretty regularly. The next one is probably, I think, the newest live album in my collection. It is Eagles Live at the Forum 1976. I think this just came out early part of this year. But this is a great show. I kind of went back and forth between this and Hell Freezes Over, because Hell Freezes Over was also a live Eagles album. But that was kind of I don't know, it had a different kind of feel than what this album does, even though I love Hell Freezes Over. It was the album that actually got me into the Eagles when I was 13, 14 years old. But the cool thing is about this live show, first off, this album was recorded over 3 nights, the LA Forum in 76. It was October of 76. And the cool thing is the band was actually in the process of finishing up Hotel California, which would be released in December of that year. So it's cool to go back and hear some of these tracks. They play Hotel California on here, obviously, which wasn't going to be released for a couple more months. So it's cool to hear, those early tracks, before they're even released on an album. I love hearing that kind of stuff. It's like I've got a Pink Floyd album, a bootleg album, a live album from the early 70s where they play parts of Dark Side of the Moon before they even were recording the album. So it's kind of cool I've always loved kind of hearing those pre-release tracks, and it's a great show. Same thing with the Bob Seger album. It's just a lot of energy on here. This is the band at their absolute peak, and it's just a fantastic album, beginning to end. This next one is one that's probably my favorite Record Store Day title from the last couple of years. Record Store Day is pretty big for live albums. There always seems to be a bunch of great ones being released. This is definitely my favorite of the bunch, though. It's Alice Cooper, $1 Billion Babies Live. So this is recorded at the Sam Houston Memorial Coliseum, I think is what the name of it was. Houston, Texas, I think it was April 28th of 73. So it's just a couple of months after $1 Billion Babies was released. And $1 Billion Babies has grown to be, I think, my favorite Alice Cooper album. It's been killer for the last 30 years. And within the last couple of years, $1 Billion Babies has really grown on me. They do almost the entire $1 Billion Babies album on here. There's a couple of other tracks. I think was there Dead Babies is on here. There's a couple other things from some of their earlier albums. I'm 18, just another great track. This was only ever released as part of the deluxe CD. I think it was a 2-disc CD deluxe version of $1 Billion Babies that they released back in 2001. So one of my favorite albums to have on vinyl is one of my favorite live albums, and it's just a great album overall. If you guys have been watching the channel for a while, you know I'm a big jazz fan, especially a big John Coltrane fan. There's a bunch of live stuff out there. You know, Coltrane at Birdland is a great live album. And even just across jazz, there's a bunch of great live jazz albums out there. This next one, hands down my absolute favorite. Of course, it's got two of my favorite jazz musicians, but it's Thelonious Monk, John Coltrane at Carnegie Hall. The cool thing is about this album was it was recorded in November of 1957. They were doing there's a Thanksgiving jazz benefit concert that they were part of, and this thing was recorded, like I said, so it was recorded in 57, and it was forgotten about. And it had been talked about for years and years and years that this concert had happened and how great it was. These two giants of jazz in the late 50s put on this fantastic show, and but it was, like I said, it was completely lost. And until 2005, somebody at the Library of Congress, I guess there's a big stockpile of recordings there. Somebody came across the recording of the show, and they helped clean it up and put it all together. So it's a great thing to listen to. It's really kind of cool it takes you back to a very different time in jazz music. And this is there's two different sets on there. There's an early show, which is like, I think, the first 3 or 4 tracks, and then there's a later show, which is like track 1 through 5, and then like 6 through 9 are the later show. So it's really kind of cool to go back and listen to this thing, and the pinnacle of these two jazz giants in 1957. Of course, I can't talk about live albums without bringing up this last one. Huge fan of this band. They're definitely one of my favorite bands of all time. This album was released back in May of 1995. Of course, that is Pulse by Pink Floyd. I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan, but the funny thing was, when this album was released, I wasn't. I was just kind of still a casual fan back in that part of the 90s. But I remember when it got released, because you had the red blinking light was everywhere in every single music store at the time. And even at that time, I really thought it was kind of a cool kind of novelty idea. And I know a lot of people over the years, they still post pictures that they've replaced the batteries and it still has the red blinking light. I wish they would have done it on the vinyl version. I think that would have been kind of cool. I guess it's just an added expense that they probably didn't want to spend. It probably would have been functionally, I guess, not really the same either to have it on the vinyl version. But the cool thing is, this was recorded over the European leg of the Division Bell tour in 1994. And it was the first time since the early 70s that they had played the entire Dark Side of the Moon live. So really kind of cool. There's even some tracks that that they included in here that hadn't played live since at least the mid 70s also. So really kind of a cool album. It's definitely one of my favorite. And I will say that Pink Floyd does have a couple other live albums. They released the Delicate Sound of Thunder back in the 80s. The difference between Pulse and Delicate Sound of Thunder is, with Delicate Sound of Thunder, they actually went back and re-recorded stuff for that. With for Pulse, they just kind of went over, because they recorded the entire European leg of that tour. So they were able to kind of overdub and kind of fix mistakes on the songs with other recordings of the live shows throughout the tour. So it's still kind of a little bit of studio magic to kind of fix some errors, but at least they're not actually in the studio re-recording stuff like they did with Delicate Sound of Thunder. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. It's just 5 of my favorites. It's really not in any kind of order, and I probably could have easily done a top 10. Just so many great live albums out there, even though, like I said in the beginning, I'm not the biggest fan of live albums. If you look at like the Black Sabbath live albums that came with the box set, I'm much more likely to listen to the studio albums rather than the live stuff. Kind of the same way with the Use Your Illusion box set that's coming out. I'm not going to drop that kind of money just because I know I'm not going to listen to those live albums that often. But at least with these 5, I go back to pretty regularly. I love all these. I love all 5 of these. And they're just fantastic albums. They're fantastic live albums for different reasons. Just the energy that you can feel in the arena at those times during those shows. But I don't know. Drop me a comment down below and let me know what you guys think. What are some of your favorite live albums? Of course, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. And that's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.